Hello everybody and welcome to Macro Talk 2. It is November the 20th, 2025. It is Thursday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the last in our four-part series on focus stacking. Yes, it is. Chapter 4, the final image. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But on Saturday, from 10 until 12 noon, we have a presume, where I'm going to give an update on my insect buying ebook. You heard that right, an ebook, a handbook on buying insects from overseas, and including my curated lists of purchased insect recommendations. It's a thank you gift for my Patreon supporters, and we'll be talking about that and many other things on Saturday. 12:30 until 2 on Saturday. Tangent and I will be doing, that's Larry and I, will be doing the Tangent program where we're going to be doing an introduction to Blender, the most confusing and complicated software on the internet. Next week is Thanksgiving, for those of you in America, or Canada I suppose, or is it just America? I don't know. But that is on Thursday and it's a holiday. I've been invited to go to dinner somewhere and I'm going to do that. Which interferes with our live stream for next week. So there is no live stream on Thursday. However, as a special Thanksgiving thing, I am going to do something we've never done before, and that is a Zoom hangout for anybody who wants to come. That'll be at 12 noon our time until 1 o'clock, so that'll be 6 o'clock I guess in the UK. If you want to come, it's free. Everybody is invited, and we have no agenda. There'll be no subject. We'll just sit around and chat. So if you have questions you want to ask or complaints you want to lodge, that's the time to do it. Thanksgiving Day, 12 noon to 1 o'clock. Your invitation will be where invitations usually are, in my blog post on Monday. There'll be an invitation on the website, there'll be an invitation over on Discord and over on Patreon. So anybody who wants to come is welcome to come, and I'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday, but no Macro Talk 2 that day. Okay, so I think that was everything. Nope, it's not. There was something else. Yes, next weekend is your last chance to enter the November competition, the One Leaf Dead or Alive competition. And yeah, it's going to be fantastic because your entries are going to be judged not only by me, but by a true macro hero and star of YouTube. Stuart Wood is going to be joining me to do the judging for this month's competition. Special treat. I'm very grateful to Stuart for volunteering, and we will do that right after, well, the 30th I think is on Sunday, isn't it? Saturday or Sunday. So so we will get together, Stuart and I, the next day, and we'll do the judging and make the video and then put it out. So that's coming up. Let me see, the competition for next month, for December, so I don't forget to tell you at the end of this one, is going to be wildcard, anything you want, and everybody is allowed to submit 2 images, whether you've won or not in the last year. 2 images, anything you want. Okay, let me see, there was one other thing. A request was made, in fact a couple of requests have come in for specific bits of content. One was for a tutorial on exactly how to do retouching in Xerene. That is something I've done several times before, but I do it a little differently now, and yeah, it's time we looked at that again. So I am currently working on a video which should be out fairly soon, where I'm going to walk you through all of the steps that I use to retouch, actually to stack and retouch in Xerene. So that's going to be fun, and it's about time we did that. So that will be coming out before you know it. There was another request right before we started from Dim796, who asked me to do a detailed session on coaxial lighting. Yeah, that's a good idea. We talked about it fairly recently. The key to coaxial lighting is subject selection, and yeah, we'll talk about that, and I'll talk about how I do it and the equipment I use and so on and so forth. So we'll get that probably in a live stream, but it won't be on next week's live stream because there was another request This one, thanks to, let me see, Alistair got in touch to say that someone had requested an update on something, and it seemed like the perfect thing for a live stream. So on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about how to use AI as a teaching learning tool in macro photography, when it's good, when it's not, how to use it with some specific examples. Very interesting question, and yeah, I'm going to do exactly that on Tuesday. I'm going to give you a complete update on how you can use these tools to become a better macro photographer, and I'm going to show you exactly how they can be used. It's powerful. You'll like that. I think it's going to be good. All right, so the focus stacking series. We're finishing up today with chapter 4. Now, we've done 3 live streams. The first one was looking at the whole concept of focus stacking, what it was, why we do it, the advantages and disadvantages of using it, where you had to be careful and so on and so forth. Then we talked about how you collect the pictures. We talked about the actual shoot, the various techniques that are used, how we gather the images, and then on Tuesday of this week we talked about the stacking process, the software in particular, how we bring the photographs together to make a final output image. Today, however, we're talking about how we take that output image from our stacking software and turn it into a photograph that we would put in a competition, post on the wall, or put on our Facebook page. How do you make the final image? Because the thing that comes out of Helicon or Zerine is very often not a final image. It's close, maybe, on a good day, but it's really not what we're looking for in terms of a really arresting photograph. It needs some work. And I'm going to talk about today exactly what that consists of. Now, what I want to be very clear on is I am not going to actually get into the nitty-gritty of post-processing. I already have a tool for that. It's called AFterStack. We do a free 2 hour or 1.5 hour to 2 hour workshop, a roundtable, twice a month on Saturdays. We've done 36 of them. It's all about focus stacking, and every tool I'm going to talk about, every technique I'm going to be mentioning has been covered in AFterStacks previously and will be covered again. This is an ongoing series. It's absolutely free. So I don't want to waste time today showing you how to use a clone stamp tool when that's something that you can actually come to the workshop and learn how to use there. We've got far too much to cover today for me to go into individual examples. I started putting together some photographs to show you in various editing tools of how to use them. But that is, I think that's beyond the scope of this, seeing as we already have a place that we do that. So instead I'm going to focus on what are the tools that we can use after our stack is finished, and when should we use them, when should we not. And I'm going to get pretty granular and explain to you about some things that you might not have thought about. When is topaz the right way to go? And if you're in topaz, what should you sharpen and what shouldn't you sharpen? These are things that you might not have thought about before, but it's fairly high level stuff, and yeah, you'll need to pay attention to it. But if it prompts any kind of thought on your part as to that sounds like something you want to do, excuse me, then all you need to do is let me know, and we will add it to the list of stuff to talk about in AFterStack if you hear something tonight that you think would be interesting. Okay, so the thing that we export from, let's go back one extra step. When we put images into, say, Zerine, and we assemble them into a stack, we take off the front and the back of the stack so that we've got just the pictures we want, and then we run them through one or the other algorithm. Well, you've already made a mistake, because you need to run them through both algorithms. So the pictures get a Pmax and a Dmap done, or if you're in Helicon, they get a B and a C done, whatever it is you choose to do. The first step in making a good photograph the most important step in making a good photograph, in my opinion, is the retouching step that happens after you get the outputs from the algorithms that you use to stack your images. I'm going to talk primarily about Zerine because I predominantly use Zerine. I do have both, and I do from time to time use both. But when it comes to doing proper retouching in a stacking tool, there isn't anywhere to do it better than in Zerine. Zerine has a complete package of retouching tools that just makes it superior to anything else on the market. Now, what you do in retouching is you take the best parts of two image outputs. So let's say that you have a PMax and a DMAP. The DMAP probably has better color, smoother textures. It's particularly good at doing colors and surface textures. It's not very good at detail. The PMax is really good at detail. It boosts the contrast in the image, and it really shows wonderful detail, especially when fine detail crosses, like insect hairs, things that we commonly encounter. The trick is, by using retouching, you're going to combine the better colors and surface textures of the DMAP with the detail that you need from the PMax. If you are not doing that, if you're looking at the DMAP and the PMax and saying, you know, they both have artifact or they both have issues, but I think the DMAP's a little better, I'm going to use the DMAP. That is not the right approach to getting the best picture. You're already choosing not to include potentially better material from one of the other photographs. So that's the key. This is the first step in getting a good picture. So when I talk about post-processing, which is what we're talking about today, I'm making a big assumption, and that big assumption is that you have already retouched your output image in Zerine or in Helicon, though retouching in Helicon is terribly difficult to do well. But let's say you've done both of those, and now you have a picture that you've exported back into Lightroom or wherever you keep your pictures, and it's time to clean it up and get ready to go. So we've covered all of that. Any questions anybody has about retouching, we'll address them in that upcoming video, I'm sure. So we've got a picture now. What are we going to do with it? Well, we need to start out by doing something that we didn't do with the stack in the first place. Now, some people do take all of the images in the stack and correct the lighting or correct the color. There are several things that folks will do in Lightroom before they export the pictures to Zerine. I don't do anything really, with the possible exception of moving the white point and the black point a little bit. The reason is the PMax algorithm does things to the picture that sometimes are a little hard for me to predict. And I don't like to make a lot of changes to the image before they go over there, because I know I'm going to have to make changes when the final images come back. So my recommendation is use a very light touch. If there, you know, the only things I would do in Lightroom before sending my images over would be very subtle, very gentle improvements in exposure. If you think that boosting the contrast would make the thing over contrasty, so maybe just lowering your white point a little bit, boosting your black point just a little bit. But other than that, don't do anything. When the picture comes back, the first thing then that you're going to want to do to this final output image that has already been retouched is look at the exposure, the white balance, the color calibration, all of the things that you would do with any other still photograph, any other image that you were planning to edit. The first thing I do, and speaking just for myself, is I use Lightroom to do all my exposure and color editing right there, because it's so intuitive and easy to use. These days, Lightroom for those who like to edit in Lightroom, have some very sophisticated masking tools that allow you to do much, much more in Lightroom than you used to be able to do. But I am going to assume for right now that anything beyond global adjustments, that in other words, anything that requires the use of a mask, will be done in Photoshop, not Lightroom. That is changing for me. There are some times that I will use a mask in Lightroom at least to see how it goes, and sometimes not even have to go to Photoshop. But for the time being, let's say that you could, if you wanted, use local brushes, local masks for highlight recovery and things like that in Lightroom. But now we're going to talk specifically about what you can do, what you can't do, what you should do, and what you shouldn't do in Photoshop. Usually it comes down to healing stuff, doing some cloning or repairing edges, removing stacking artifacts that are still left after the retouching, and occasionally replacing backgrounds. In my case, it's a little more than occasionally. I love to replace backgrounds. I like using gradients as backgrounds for a lot of my macro stuff, so I routinely do that. So a couple of other things that you might do is a little bit of dodging and burning, especially when you're trying to remove some residual evidence of halo, stuff like that. But let's talk for a bit about the tools that work and the tools that don't work for stacked images in Photoshop. Now, this is something that we don't normally talk about in this sense. I mean, there are tools that we use, and I think a lot of us fall into the trap of using these tools, whether we're looking at a macro photograph or any other photograph, but that's a bit risky. Stacked high magnification macro photographs are quite different in the way they respond to some of these tools. So what I'm going to do is go through some of the tools and techniques that are particularly useful for higher magnification, we'll say 3x and above, stuff that works and stuff that doesn't. And this may be new to you, so hear me out. Number one, stuff that is very useful would be the healing brush tool, for example. Now, that is not the same thing as the spot healing brush. The healing brush and the spot healing brush do a couple of different things. The healing brush is one of the most important tools for cleaning up a macro photograph. It allows for controlled sampling, so that the spot healing brush tends to kind of guess what you're putting in there, but it allows you to keep the directionality of textures, and it's great for things like removing dust. That is, the healing brush is great for that. Specks of pollen or little blemishes in the background, hot pixels that you may encounter, or spots on your sensor, or PMAX debris if you have any from the PMAX stack. All of that is great for cleaning up with the healing brush. And a clue here, a tip. There's going to be a few tips in here that I think are important. When using the healing brush, be sure to sample from an area of the photograph that is at an equal depth in the stack. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to sample a bit of my ear, then sample from the other ear, because it's about the same depth in the stack. The reason you do that is if you have a focus mismatch, if there's any issue with the focus, and you're drawing your source material from somewhere that has a different focal detail, you can move that over and get kind of smudging. So be careful with that. The clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool is my favorite tool in all of Photoshop. I use it for a lot of stuff. But the secret to using it successfully with high magnification macro shots is to use it very delicately with a low flow rate. Usually about, when I'm when I'm doing most of the stuff I would do with focus with the clone stamp tool, I have it at 100% or close to it. I'm usually just in a hurry to get it done. But with the macro stuff, you really need to layer it on. So using a very low flow rate, you can take your clone sample from wherever you're coming from, and where you're painting the sample in the new area, put it in these 20 or 30% flow rate coats, if you would. It allows you to feather it in, and it makes it much less obvious. Think of it as a scalpel more than a sledgehammer. That's because that's really what it is. It gives you full control over the source. You can rotate it, you can enlarge it, you can flip it, you can change the source in many different ways before you paint it on. But the key is, if you want to preserve the microstructure in a magnified image, you want to put it on very gently and pay attention to the structure. It's perfect for repairing seams when you have stacked images where part of the DMAP has been replaced with detail from a PMAX. That clone stamp tool is exactly what you would want to use to smooth over that area of transition in a very believable way. It is wonderful. The clone stamp with low flow rate is my go-to solution for residual halo. Any halo that I couldn't get rid of in the focus stacking or retouching procedures, I get rid of using the clone stamp tool with very low flow rates. If you want to extend backgrounds or fix, if you have artifacts on the surrounding areas, that's another time that I use the clone stamp tool. It's great for getting rid of any stacking artifacts on surfaces. Another tip for you here is, if you use the darken or lighten blend mode in Photoshop when you're using the tool, it prevents you, particularly when you use the darken one, it prevents you from uh, adding glow to an area that you're trying to cover up a halo using the darken mode. So consider that. It's kind of like cloning and burning at the same time. Um, another tool that is really powerful for a high magnification macro is using curves, especially local curves on separate layers with masks. It allows you to kind of control the cutoff of highlights, and it allows you to get control of a bunch of different lighting issues that you can see when you stacked, especially with PMAX. It's a very useful tool. Creating a new layer, putting a curve on that layer, and then masking that curve and painting in the effect only where you need it, so that you can add or remove contrast by changing the shape of the curve. You know how to do that. It's like it's probably most akin to using a local dodge and burn combination that's on a mask. It's very, very good for redefining three-dimensionality, shadowing, shading, and you can actually recover highlights that get a little bit lost in PMAX stacks. You can get them back by very gently changing the curve on a layer in that area. Um, Another tip: if you use very small, soft brushes, feathered brushes, to shape the subject, it helps with that 3D effect. When you use larger brushes, it's a little harder to be convincing. One thing that I'd be very careful about, though I do use it in macro, is frequency separation. We normally think about using frequency separation as a tool in portrait photography to make skin look particularly nice while not really interfering with the texture of it. Um, and it can be if you don't use it subtly and well, it can be problematic. But it's really good for retouching a smooth background and making it look, removing blemishes or distractions from it, while maintaining the overall look of the background. It's great for cleaning dirt off like large shiny surfaces, like getting dirt off a beetle's back or something like that. Frequency separation works there. It's great for unblotching backgrounds that are blotchy. Frequency separation works perfectly for that, but never use it on textures at high magnification. It completely messes them up. Compound eyes, that's another place you should use it. Never. I was going to give an example, but no, never. I would not use it on anything with sharp edges like crystals. Frequency separation won't work in that. It won't work when you have fine detail, hairs or bristles, insect wings. Anything that has structure that you can follow all the way down to individual pixels, like very fine hairs. Don't use frequency separation there. It'll mess it up. It's really only safe when the low frequency layer, which is one of the things you separate in frequency separation, is larger than the scale of the textures in your subject. Confusing, isn't it? Just don't do it. If you have any doubt, don't do it. I have an action in Photoshop that sets up frequency separation, and most of the time I use it for portraits, to be honest. Selective color is something that can be fiddled around with in Photoshop to great effect. It allows you to manipulate backgrounds really well, especially yellows and greens. You can make things like the chitin of an insect's body look properly balanced and not have weird color gradients in them. And you can turn some images you look at and say, my goodness, that is a lot of PMax in that image, especially if you didn't use any DMAP input to it. But if I have a DMAP image that I retouch with PMax and use a lot of the PMax, the image can come out looking kind of like a PMax image. Does that make sense to you? It's a little over contrasty, a little crispy, and yeah, I think they look a little unbelievable, to be honest. You'll know it if you see it. Come to AfterStack and we can talk about that. But if you have images that look very much like they're pure PMaxes, then you can help recover the believability of those images by using selective color changes. It's great for getting rid of the magenta green bias that you get from PMax images, and it does it kind of instantly. All right, the camera raw filter. This is less important if you're doing most of your stuff in Lightroom when it comes to exposure, but there are a couple of things in camera raw filter that you might want to wait till you're in Photoshop to use, in which case you would open up that filter in Photoshop by going to filter, camera raw filter, and it would move the picture over there, and it offers a few things that you'd recognize from Lightroom, like texture sliders and a dehaze button, color grading that we talked about, and a gradient tool. They're all in the camera raw filter, and they're okay if you're using them for background gradients or to very gently improve clarity in some area of the photograph, or add some subtle vibrance. But at high magnification, I would not use texture, even on textured insects, ever above about a setting of 10. And that is not on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a scale of 1 to 100. You avoid adding texture or clarity more than about 5. Another thing to avoid is dehaze. All of these sliders, texture, clarity, and dehaze, that are wonderful on single shot photographs when you're trying to get a little bit of extra punch out of the photograph. If you use any of these sliders on high magnification macro photographs, you're going to create a situation where the program will hallucinate microstructure where it doesn't exist. You just have to do it and zoom in and look at your photograph. With high magnification, it doesn't know, the program doesn't know how to make texture, clarity, and dehaze work with the surface of chitin, and it will just hallucinate things to put in there, and it'll tend to do it over and over again. So you can actually get repeating patterns of weird hallucinated shapes from using those sliders. I don't use them with my high mag editing. Now, the best tool of them all, the best thing that you can use with any macro photograph are these layer masks. That every layer you make, you have the ability to mask it. The reason is macro photographs don't lend themselves very well to global editing. Meaning, if you have a photograph, you don't want to do any global editing that affects everything, because it's complicated. But the especially with these AI tools, they're not really sure what we're asking them to do when we do these global edits across photographs at high magnification. It's not something they see that often, so they haven't learned much about it. So what I do is I use layer masks to sharpen eyes, for example. I just put the mask on everything else and leave the eyes there and use sharpening on the eyes, or to denoise just the background. So I will select out everything else in the photograph and then put denoise on the background. I only color correct the highlights in a picture, for example, or darken only those areas where there is some residual glow from halo. And that's what layer masks are for. It gives you really accurate control over what parts of the photograph you're affecting. A tip, I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but if you convert your stack output, which is usually going to be a TIFF, into a smart object before you apply any filters to it, then you can go back to where you were. You can adjust the strength of the filter effect that you put in there. You can even move or adjust the mask, and you can do all of that and get rid of any unwanted sharpening easily and quickly. It basically preserves your zerine output, so you don't do anything destructive with it. So yeah, when you're working on a TIFF in Photoshop, I recommend making it a smart object before you do anything else. Tools that you should avoid like the plague with high magnification, probably with any stacked images, but definitely things that distort structures at the micro scale, things that destroy stacking detail, and things that introduce unfixable artifacts. Believe it or not, there are tools that will do that. The spot healing brush is one of those. Now, I love the spot healing brush in a lot of contexts, but again, above 5 times magnification, it probably should be illegal to use it. They probably should have a way of blocking it from being turned on, because it invents textures basically. When you use that tool, it paints made up patterns over actual microstructure, and the more you do it, the more obvious it becomes. It's like me trying to bondo a dent in a car. It just makes it more obvious. It oftentimes it confuses depth levels. So when you use the spot healing brush, it'll take source pixels from somewhere at a different depth, and it can lead to these focus smudges that kind of like focus banding but more localized. Yeah, and it just mushes up fine detail when you use it anywhere near fine detail. So use the healing brush, don't use the spot healing brush. Content aware fill, one of those newer AI based tools. Great for landscapes. You might even use it on street photography or portraits. Just don't use it in macro. It does the same thing. It makes bizarre. You zoom in and you'll see the bizarreness of using content aware fill. It's because it's not really aware of the content. It is with most photographs because it's seen lots of them before and it knows how to guess at what you're doing. But in macro, I've just not been happy with it. Content aware fill works a little bit on backgrounds, maybe, but yeah, it generates repeating patterns of false shapes and squiggles in the fine texture of almost everything. It just doesn't get edges and depth levels as well as we need it to in macro photography. So just don't use it on your subject, and you'll be fine. Um, this is one you may or may not use anyway, but high pass sharpening, kind of either globally or just on the subject. High pass is a very coarse way to sharpen. We're going to be talking a lot in just a minute about topaz and the various ways to use topaz safely in macro. But high pass sharpening in Photoshop is not a good first choice. In macro, we need to sharpen very, very selectively. High pass sharpening just slaps the stuff on everything, and it actually creates halos. Believe it or not, it makes hairs and fine setae on insects melt. It looks like they literally melt when you use that high pass sharpening. Wings just become plasticky looking. Yeah, I don't like it at all. And you get in PMax, when you're using PMax, if you put parts of the PMax output into your final image, it has a tendency that you'll see in darker areas, that the PMax actually amplifies the noise a little bit, and the high pass sharpening then sharpens the noise a little bit. So you can end up with really obvious and ugly sharpened noise. I just don't use it. We'll use topaz sharpening a little bit later on, or smart sharpening in Photoshop, but no high pass sharpening. Not worth it. Global clarity, texture, just don't use them. You know the sliders in Lightroom. They're fantastic at normal scale. They're great for adding a little clarity or a little texture to not macro, life size stuff, big things, buildings. Uh, just they are terrible dealing with detail in macro. They kind of destroy detail. What they do is they push the contrast in the mid-tone areas a bit too hard. Well, that's the whole idea of it. That's where the clarity comes from. But when you do it on macro photographs, it can again hallucinate textures that aren't there. They'll widen halos and just make the picture look less and less believable. The more you slide those clarity sliders, the less it looks like a real macro photograph. So if you're going to use it, well, don't. But if you were, keep your clarity and texture very, very low, or mask everything and apply it extraordinarily selectively. Best bet is just not to do it. Noise reduction. Why is this in the never use it list? Let me be specific. Never use global noise reduction. That is the whole photograph. The reason is, again, what happens when you reduce noise is it tends to obliterate or smear the microstructure that we see in high magnification photographs. It doesn't know what to do with it, so it smears it, turns everything, makes it look plasticky again, and it destroys fine hair detail that you've gone to so much trouble to preserve in the way you stack the image. then you use a global denoise, and it basically denoises the hair right off your insect. So if you're going to use it, basically just use it on background and use masks. But I wouldn't use it on subjects. I wouldn't denoise subjects. The liquefy tool, if you ever feel, did you know that tool? It's under filters. It's where you can stretch things out, and yeah, just don't use it. In fact, don't use it ever for anything. Yeah, it's you just end up with you just end up with insects that aren't the right shape. Some people do use it though, not sure why. Um, if you're using Gaussian blur to smooth out backgrounds, and we do that, don't we? We like to make the background a little more out of focus than it was. Be very, very careful with the rate excuse me, with the radius, because the radius will break what's going on at the edges if your radius overlaps the edges of the thing. Use surface blur instead, or medium blur. Just don't use that large radius blur that blurs everything. You just can't get it accurately enough. So the golden rule, I guess, is Photoshop is a way to refine your photograph more than it is a rescue tool. Does that make sense? Um, Anything that you do to try to fix a bad stack in Photoshop will almost always end up costing you detail in the image. And yeah, any editing you do in Photoshop that is just designed to polish an already good stack is going to be fantastic. That's what it's good at. That's what it's best at. It's not really a rescue tool. Though we all, every single one of us, I think, use it as a rescue tool. I can only speak for myself. I know I do. It's hard to work for hours on a stacked image and then retouching that image and then getting it over into Lightroom and getting all the exposure and everything corrected, and then seeing that there is something that you've done, something that you missed, or something that happened that you couldn't fix in retouching that you now have to try to repair, and it almost never works out like you think it's going to, because these tools are largely not designed for use in the kind of photography we do. Use it to polish your photograph, not to fix it. So what about sharpening? It's sharpening is something that you're always told to do last, and I agree. You do it last, and do it gently. Let's talk about one particular tool that has probably been the dominant tool in photography, all kinds of photography for decades now, and that's the Topaz suite of products. Um, Topaz has strengths and weaknesses that you need to know about if you're going to use it correctly in macro photography. Um, for example, here are some examples of how Topaz can really, really help. And I'm talking specifically now about Topaz Sharpen, but we'll talk about the other tools as well. When your image has just a very mild amount of micro blur, and that can be caused by having just ever so slight misalignment issue that didn't get fully corrected, or if there's a tiny bit of movement in the subject at some point in the stack. If you're using a slightly smaller aperture than you should, and you have a little bit of diffraction, or if you're using an old vintage macro lens, and that gives you a tiny little bit of lens softness, or if you've already done a lot of processing, say with other AI tools or in Photoshop, and you get that softening that happens just from being exposed to a lot of different processes, then Topaz can do a good job with all of those of giving you back that nice crisp edge. And that's really what it does, is it restores a nice crisp edge. It helps define the micro contrast in the image, and it gives a more realistic texture, especially on things that you know have um, a, a texture that you would recognize. It helps bring that back. Used lightly and carefully, yes, it's a useful tool. I like it. Um, it's good when you get noise accumulating in the background too. Um, if you're using continuous light at a high ISO in the studio, and if you stack many frames, really deep stacks, and you get this kind of mixed noise occurring in the background areas. PMAX, which boosts micro noise, or I guess you'd call it the dark parts of the contrast. And when you're photographing dark subjects like ants and dark beetles, anything like that where noise accumulates, the Topaz denoise tool can do a really good job with that. It tends to smooth out the noise pattern, so the noise is more homogeneous and less noticeable. Smooths out blotchy gradients. I do like the Topaz denoise, and it will keep edges intact if you use low settings, and that's really useful. So I'm a fan of denoise, even with macro pictures. Um, if you need to print a picture, especially if you're going to print any bigger than say 16 or 24 inches in any dimension, so a big print, um, you need to be careful, because printing is going to exaggerate any softness that you have in there. That's frequently why you'll see sharpening outputs as a recommended step before sending something to a printer. And you do need to have a slightly more assertive approach to how you treat the micro contrast in the picture. So Topaz's sharpening tool helps you get to that printing stage in a way that you're going to end up with an image that looks like it does on your monitor. Um, yeah, it's an important key step, but I think Topaz probably does a better job of sharpening for printing than what we have in Photoshop. Um, if you have a Bayer sensor, the what all color cameras do, and you have that demosaicing softening that can occur in stacks, especially when there's a lot of fine detail or fine repeating detail. It can make things, edges especially, look a bit mushy. Topaz is great at restoring the definition in that kind of picture, and yeah, it helps separate edges again, so you can see fine structure. You just got to be super careful with it. Now, there are a few things that Topaz does not help with, and these are a lot of the things that we encounter in macro photography. So, if there's nothing else you hear out of this, listen to this. When you're using high magnification on things that have a complex structure, which is, after all, most of what we do, Topaz is not as good with that. So if you're at 5x or 10x, then you run the risk of inventing non-existent detail if you use Topaz at higher magnification. It can create these wormy things that weren't there before. They're just made up because, again, Topaz doesn't really know what to do with these high magnification pictures. It can make chitin and other smooth surfaces on insects appear to ripple, which is not very helpful. And it can separate edges, and again, it can create a sense of structure where there isn't any. And it's very common on the wings of beetles and anything iridescent. I did a whole bunch of high magnification tiger beetle photographs, looking at the colors on their thorax, I wanted to see exactly what the microstructure was of the depressions in the elytra of these lovely beetles. And in order to get a clearer picture, I put them all through Topaz. And honestly, the what came out was just an unbelievable mess. It was a very, very big mistake to use, and these were at 20x magnification. At 20x, when you're looking at fine structure of iridescent material, the Topaz just doesn't know what to do with it, and it butchers it. I had to learn the lesson the hard way. It's terrible with compound eyes up close. Don't use it for that either. In fact, if you're taking a high magnification picture, I just wouldn't bother with doing anything in Topaz with that once you're up at 10, 20x. Basically, if you're stacking at 20x, the Pmax algorithm in Xeroing gives you all of the contrast and the texture that you're allowed to have. You don't try to get any more; it won't look believable. There's activity going on in the chat here. Oh my goodness! David super chatted a lovely, as did Diane and Julie. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, David. That's so nice to get those surprise things. I do love it. You get a free question, I think. Anyway, let's move on because I want to make sure I give you all of these warnings. If you have an image that already has halo left in it, or you have any glowing around edges, even if it's subtle, do not try try to use sharpening in Topaz, because it absolutely will amplify those glowy edges, and it's just not good for anything that has those kind of halos left in them. It makes transitions between surfaces look rubbery. It does. It's weird. Try it if you want, but not in real life. You can you can take a minor stacking artifact and run it through Topaz if you're using high settings, and you can turn it into something absolutely unfixable. So be careful. Don't use Topaz if you have very, very clean backgrounds in your high magnification shots. If you want to keep the micro texture, then using Topaz just over smooths the background and makes it look unreal. That's the other. Not everything makes well. Try it and see. Take something with a smooth background and then crank the numbers up and run it through Topaz, and you'll see that backgrounds become very fake looking. And it sharpens edges in a very unnatural way when you have these clean backgrounds, and it creates halos around the subject. So are you getting the message? These are things that you don't want to use Topaz for. Unless you want your background to look posterized and blotchy. And I know that some of mine do, because I was guilty of this when Topaz, when I first started using it. I'd used this a lot on my clean backgrounds and ended up with posterized backgrounds and blotchy, unattractive gradients. If you've already sharpened an image, and basically Pmax is a sharpening tool. If you've already done that, and you have a heavy Pmax image that you're working on, running that through Topaz is just going to blow out the bits that were close to being blown out already. It's just going to give you terrible over contrast the edges. It'll destroy any subtle tone transitions, and it makes everything look crispy and fried. So yeah, if you've already got a sharp image, a predominantly Pmax image out of Zerine, don't take it into topaz, it'll ruin it. You can always tell the photograph that has been topazed, uh, over topazed, I guess, when the hairs look crispy, like they're going to burst into flames, and the chitin looks like plastic or rubber, and you don't have good midtones. They're all kind of crushed. Any halos on black backgrounds is another way you can know that it's probably been to topaz. So it is a fine tool to use very sparingly in high magnification photographs. So what is a good rule for using topaz? It's kind of like Photoshop. You use topaz to polish the image, to make a good image look great, not to rescue it. If Photoshop's not a rescue place, topaz is even more so. If you're using topaz to fix a stacking error, yeah, go back and fix the stack instead. You'll be happier. Okay, so settings that work. If you use topaz sharpen, say remove blur at 5 to 25, a setting of 5 to 25. Sharpen, keep it below 20, 10 or 20. Noise suppression 20 or 40. These are low settings compared to where I think the defaults are halfway up the scale. And whenever in doubt, apply a mask and put the effect only where you want it. In denoise, I tell you what, the settings in denoise are even, the ones I use are even lower than what I use in sharpen. They are 5 to 10 on everything, on the denoise, on the sharpen, yeah, it's very very slight. You have to use it very subtly, otherwise, as I've been saying, you get all kinds of weird stuff going on. Never use sharpening globally. If you absolutely, I do it. I know I shouldn't, but try not to use sharpening globally in topaz. Don't use high strength settings. It won't look that bad to you. It'll look bad to everybody else though who looks at it later. Don't sharpen a noisy background. Don't sharpen iridescent wings. Just let them be soft, and it looks more believable. And if you have a Pmax output that you're trying to post process, don't sharpen it without using a mask to limit where you put the sharpening and the degree of sharpening. It's 2 minutes to 3 o'clock, and you know what? I should stop right there. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about really was evaluating your image when you're finished. When you've done this, you're done in topaz. You've saved the image. Look at it. Look at it. Walk away and then come back and look at it. Does it look natural? Does it look believable? Does the light work? These are what really matters. Does the background support the story of the image, or does it distract you from it? Is the whole thing believable and intentional? If it's not, but it started out that way, if the picture appealed to you because of those things being present, and after you've done your retouch, after you've done your editing, it looks worse, go back and start over. Yeah, I mean, this is hard, and if you still don't know how to do it, come to Afterstack every other Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning till 11:30 or noon, with Bud Parrott and myself, and yeah, it's good. I've got to go because it's time, and I haven't had a chance to say anything to anybody. Um, I am going to. I'm going to read all of your messages after we get through. I promise, and I am going to, the things you've asked me to do, I will do. Yes, I will, like make the video and talk about coaxial lighting. I've seen it all. Joseph says, tell us more about insect bursting into flames tool and melting insect tool. Now, this you see is Joseph doesn't like insects, doesn't like photographing insects either. So he doesn't really mean it. He wouldn't want to see a poor insect burst into flames. No comment, Joseph. All right, guys, enjoyed it. If I don't see you on Saturday, which I should because you'll almost certainly want to be at Tangent or Pazoom, but if I don't see you at either, I will see you on Tuesday for one of our AI updates, and this really will be an update, new stuff. And then Thanksgiving, if you want to join me for a get together and chit chat, 12 noon on Thanksgiving Day, which is a week from today. Thank you everybody for coming. I know that that was a tremendously dense block of information, but yeah, it's the nature of the beast. This stuff's difficult. Did anybody ever tell you that? Macro photography is hard, and we need to know all of this stuff. So have a great weekend, and I will see you later. Thank you so much, everybody who super chatted me. You guys are so kind, and I will see you next week. No, I'll see you on Saturday. See you on Saturday.